Today we're going to talk about the Deepeeka brand Archer's Dagger. So I got this dagger some time ago. I got it around the same time I got my Clooney hand and half sword, and the whole reason I got it was the color scheme and the way the sheath is done. It matches. I wanted a dagger that would match my sword. Lo and behold, Deepeeka delivered. The handle itself is also done in a similar fashion where it's got a leather cord wrap grip. Fits very comfortable in the hand, and I kind of have a tendency to lean in towards liking those grips more so than others. The dagger itself can be found for retail on Cult of Athena, running for roughly $70. I'm not affiliated with Deepeeka nor Cult of Athena. This is just a simple review so that you might get an idea of what you're purchasing. Dagger does come with a very nice leather wrapped sheath, and the tip of it is also capped with a steel cap to protect the end of it, keeping it from getting damaged or drug on anything. The sheath itself is made of wood, and it has some kind of foam bumper inside. It fits just right inside. It doesn't drag or get tight like some of the other Deepeeka swords I have. The blade itself comes stock as unsharpened, though Deepeeka does offer sharpening for a lot of their blades. This one I got unsharpened mainly so that I could still use it for reenactment, though the tip, it's still fairly pointy. I would have to likely grind off some of the tip and round it. The blade, it comes in a fully functional manner. It would just need sharpening. For the guard, it sits at a very nice space between itself and the pommel, where when you wrap your hand around it, you get a kind of a tight point between the guard and pommel so that your hand fully fills the handle. Some people might find that a problem because they grip differently, but this would be more of a backup, secondary tool weapon that an archer might be using should he need to enter the fray or the enemy get too close to his position. It gives a good length of reach for what it is. You've got roughly 12 to 14 inches of blade here. That's just a guesstimate I have. I'll put the actual measurement right here. The guard itself is pretty well centered for the shape of it, though the two grind lines that they have as decoration on the guard's face, they're not quite centered. Similar to the Clooney hand and half sword, they did a extra spacer for painting over the pommels so that if something in your handle breaks and you got to make a repair, it's very easy to make that repair without completely ruining the tang of your blade. The cording for the handle itself. So some cons are it doesn't come with any way of suspending it on a belt. You have to either rework your sword belt to be able to attach it in to the rest of your gear. Some people might just slip it into a belt behind their pouch like so, but that would mean if you want to draw it, you draw the whole part. I came up with a really simple solution, and I think it'll long-term be the one I stick with, where I made a simple loop frog where it can be hung like so. But that also kind of showed to me that the handle itself outweighs the rest of the blade. I will likely be able to come up with a new frog similar to this one. This was just a test to see if it'd even work. It did seem like when I was balancing it, it should be balancing fine, but from the position where it holds, it's just too small and too light to keep it in place. I'm gonna try to make a new frog to where it actually sits more on the belt, whether straight up and down or at an angle. Hopefully I can come up with something there that works. As a parrying dagger, if you were to use it paired with a sword, I would have no problem wearing this one though with any of my other swords. It kind of fits a broad range of history for how they went, though the style of it might have a cutoff point by how far back you go. Lastly, let's see how it hangs on a belt. Even though it's top heavy, it actually sits fairly nice on the belt with little issue. If I really wanted to make it lay flatter, I can twist it in that frog to where the loop is more towards the rear and it hangs a little flatter to the body instead of out at an angle like so. Dagger itself is at a nice hand height and easy to draw. The lack of belt suspension. I don't even have a simple loop that's been added to the sides to be able to hang it from a belt without it getting all wonky like with the frog. So that is definitely a downside, but I'm a fairly creative person to fill in the blank slates on this kind of stuff, so certainly I will be able to figure out a better permanent solution for a frog to hang it from my belt on. Another con is, even though I really like the leather wrap on the handle, from just holding it a lot, especially with a gauntlet, it's been slowly wearing down. The leather quality itself is actually fairly poor. It's been scraped away quite a bit by the fingers of my gauntlet. You can't quite see it there, but there's actually a really fuzzy area on the handle on this side specifically. This side not so much, because at the time that was where the soft palm of my gauntlet was, whereas this one has been getting scraped away fairly easily. The leather itself might be pig leather, which has a tendency for especially the belly area, which is commonly used in a lot of Indian made stuff because of how pliable and easy it is to work with. It's very soft and doesn't wear as well as cattle leather. It's kind of obvious though why they don't use the cattle leather. For the weight, for the daggers, it doesn't matter so much, but this is part of a complaint I have about it, is most of the weight is all in the handle, a little bit below the guard, that it has its point of balance. Being as short as it is, you're not really needing that weight as a chopper, and the weight in the handle does help to absorb a little bit of shock that you might get when it strikes, but it's a little bit excessive for what it is, because the pommel is a little oversized for just being a simple dagger's pommel. It's making the handle just overly heavy. Its size is based more on aesthetic rather than function. They did try to solve some of the issue of weight by making the dagger pommel tapered on the sides, so it's wider on the bottom than it is at the top, which does help with the weight a little bit, as well as giving a little bit of an offset dishing on the inside. That helps take down some of the weight as well, though it would have been better had they been able to go a little bit deeper. The blade itself is actually just one big chunk of steel. There's no distill taper like some of the other blades I have. They did, though, make a decent grind line for keeping it straight on both edges of the blade, where you get that nice diamond shape when you look down the blade itself. For what it is, they still did pretty good. Being as short as it is, that extra weight from the lack of distill taper won't affect the blade itself. It's also still pretty strong as it is, and it would help in this case of a dagger. Here in the future, I want to attempt to do some tests on it for whether or not it can puncture armor, steel plate, and whether or not it could be an anti-armor weapon. Certainly it could, between the gaps in the armor, such as the armpits, and if you can get underneath the aventail and above the gorget, as well as within the elbows and behind the knee. Would I recommend this dagger for someone that's trying to put together a medieval kit and just want a simple dagger? 100% yes. I have been very satisfied with this dagger and the way it functions. I've actually used it a little bit in Olympic style fencing when using a parrying dagger with one of my friends, and it has actually been very effective in working as such. Doesn't mean that I was striking with it. I did not want to damage their sword. The edges, I actually, instead of sharpening them, I rounded them down so that it would not chew into their rapier as well. I do not want to go much farther than beyond just using it as that style of dagger. I do use it in some of my reenactment kits, especially when reenacting a longbowman or even crossbowman, because it's just that perfect size of tool that many would carry. However, recent years I've actually replaced it, so it's been a little bit in storage. Another part I can recommend about it is the blade itself is quite hard. When I rounded the edge of the blade, it took quite a bit because of the strength of metal. The grinder I was using was almost skating across the metal, and it's absorbed impact quite well. So whatever steel it is, it's very good at both dealing with impact as well as being just strong in general, because it doesn't even want to bend. I see a little bit of warping in the blade, but most of the movement you see there is just my fingers adjusting as I'm trying to flex the blade. This is a beast for just being a little simple dagger. If I could have a sword made out of whatever steel this was, or just a version of this, just scaled up, longer blade, a little bit bigger to fit a true one-handed sword style, similar to an arming sword, this would probably be my favorite sword out there. All I would need is a distill taper. But yeah, I can recommend this for anyone just wanting to find a within budget dagger to go with their kit. Being $70, you get very decent quality for price, and it's not something you would end up regret buying. It's very solidly built. It comes with a pretty nice sheath as it is. It also has a proper wooden handle, similar to how a lot of medieval sword fillers were for the handles themselves, and the leather wrapping both gives it a very nice aesthetic look, as well as a pretty functional grip for if you're barehanded or even you have simple leather gloves. The leather handle does help with leather gloves, because if it was smooth, my glove hand I use would be slipping in it more than it does with the leather cord grip. Cap on the end of the sheath just really helped as well, so when it bangs against something, it's not going to beat down on the threading that stitched up the back, and that's something I almost missed. The back is done very well for stitching, where they tried to hide it as best they could. That in itself just makes it even higher quality in my eyes. So let me know what you think of it yourself in the comments, if you've had any experience with these ones, especially if it's broken on you, just so I can try to put it through similar tests to see if that's a consistency thing in the steel or something in more recent years or earlier years. I've had this for maybe 3 years, so the steel quality might have changed. I'm mostly referencing this to the arming sword I had, that they used a wear shim for the blade, making it very strong but brittle, versus my broadsword that has a very fat blade. Spring steel, absorbs impact great, as well as fairly flexible for what it is. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and take care.